the Sedition Act. I would love to throw people in jail that I don't like. I mean, that's fantastic. It just make things easier in general if the people that stood in my way just could go away. But it's not necessarily the best thing or the nicest thing to do to people. Today we explore the relevance of the Alien Enemies Act in today's world and ask, is it justified? We will take a look at current events to determine if the historic law still applies today. I'm Charles Randolph, and welcome to Speak Online, where we seek out good sources of information to gain new perspectives on modern day events and the media. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate all your support. Let's watch and reflect. Before we get started, today you can get 40% off a subscription to Ground News. At Ground News, you can see every side of every news story and through the media bias with reliable news from local to international sources. You can access over 50,000 news sources. You can discover stories you aren't being shown and look through the media bias. I use this service every day. In fact, you'll see me use it on this show to help bring you good information. So please help support the channel and click the link for 40% off Ground News today in the description below. First, let's get a general idea of what this Alien Enemies Act is. I found a fairly good article, a little bit on the right, but it brings a few things to light that I think are worth noting. Okay, so this was from The Thinking Conservative, promoting the politics of reality. You always got to throw that in there. The Alien Enemies Act of 1798, an explainer of the law Trump may invoke. The act allows the government to detain or remove foreign nationals without a hearing in times of war or invasion. President Donald Trump is considering employing a centuries-old law to expedite the deportation of foreign national gangs and cartel members to help secure the U.S. border. On the campaign trail, Trump pledged to invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to target and dismantle every migrant criminal network operating on American soil. The Alien Enemies Act is part of the larger Alien and Sedition Acts. So that's a good thing to know. It's more than one thing. Sedition Act, good to know. Which Congress enacted during John Adams' presidency when the United States was on the brink of war with France. It is a sweeping law that, when invoked, grants the president extraordinary power. And that is one of the arguments against this is one, it's historic and it was only called into action during times of war. On his first day in office, Trump signed 10 border-related executive actions, including an executive order that states that the president may invoke the Alien Enemies Act to stop any invasion or predatory incursion against the territory of the United States by a qualifying actor. We're going to be looking into that order here momentarily. It's always good to go straight to the source of information. 2 conditions must be met to invoke the act, said Joshua Trevino, Chief Transformation Officer for the Texas Public Policy Foundation, a conservative think tank that analyzes policy. First, there must be a war, invasion, or predatory incursion of U.S. territory. Second, the invasion or hostile act must be committed by a foreign government. All right, that is key right there. We are going to make a note of that. The act must be committed by a foreign government. That is a big one. The Alien Enemies Act has only been invoked 3 times in more than 200 years. It was last used by President Franklin D. Roosevelt during World War II to create Japanese internment camps after the 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor. The internment camps have since been condemned by civil rights groups. I'd like to recommend a really good book. It's called Snow Falling on Cedars. It really gives you an idea of that time period of what individuals went through. Very enlightening. The act was initially used to stop French people in the United States from agitating for war. Based on that scenario, Trevino believes terrorist groups acting as foreign powers or operating in association with foreign governments could meet the requirements needed to invoke the law. That's it right there. When you look, and this is him, it's a quote, and when you look at cartel activity, then we are being invaded, he said. If an organization can kill Americans on U.S. soil and operate with foreign state support, it's easy to make the argument that they are invading the country, he said. So the key thing here is you have to have evidence to prove foreign government collusion. Okay. He said the cartels and foreign gangs could be seen as quasi-government entities assaulting the country's sovereignty. Quote, they actually do have state support. In many cases, they are state agents. The intersection of the cartels with the Mexican government is very robust. The cartels take in billions of dollars through drug smuggling and human trafficking, have their own armed forces and control territory within Mexico. The Alien Enemies Act states that when the president makes a public proclamation to invoke the act, all natives, citizens, denizens, or subjects of the hostile nation or government, being males of the age of 14 years and upwards, who shall be within the United States and not actually naturalized, shall be liable to be apprehended, restrained, secured, and removed as alien enemies. It's noted here, the Alien Enemies Act permits the government to detain and expel most citizens of a nation deemed a threat to U.S. security without a hearing based solely on their country of birth or citizenship. That's a big one. Trump issued 2 related executive orders that address the designation of foreign enemies and an invasion. The first order is titled Designating Cartels and Other Organizations as Foreign Terrorist Organizations and Specially Designed Global Terrorists. And the second is Guaranteeing the States Against Invasion. Interesting. So we can look into both of those. All right. You know, I give this guy props. He did a good job on that article. That was pretty neutral, and it gave good information. Good for him. Let's take a look at this executive order. I think this will be very useful. Now, this is the invocation of the Alien Enemies Act regarding the invasion of the United States by Tren de Aragua from the White House. I expect what is going on here is a specific choice of this Tren de Aragua group because of a government affiliation. We usually hear of the gang MS-13, and I was surprised that this was picked rather than MS-13. So, this was on March 15th, 2025. We'll look into it. By the President of the United States of America, a proclamation. Tren de Aragua is a designated foreign terrorist organization with thousands of members, many of whom have unlawfully infiltrated the United States and are conducting irregular warfare and undertaking hostile actions against the United States. TDA operates in conjunction with Cartel de los Soles, the Nicolas Maduro regime-sponsored narco-terrorism enterprise, wow, that is a lot, based in Venezuela and commits brutal crimes including murders, kidnappings, extortions, and human, drug, and weapons trafficking. Not someone you want over for a family dinner. TDA has engaged in and continues to engage in mass illegal migration to the United States to further its objectives of harming United States citizens, undermining public safety, and supporting the Maduro regime's goal of destabilizing democratic nations in the Americas, including the United States. TDA is closely aligned with and indeed has infiltrated the Maduro regime, including its military and law enforcement apparatus. TDA grew significantly while Tarek El Something served as governor of Aragua between 2012 and 2017. Okay, so this goes into everything to back the claim that it's connected to a foreign government, which I can buy. I can. The result is a hybrid criminal state that is perpetrating an invasion of and predatory incursion into the United States, and which poses a substantial danger to the United States. I can agree with that as well. Indeed, in December 2024, Interpol Washington confirmed Tren de Aragua, and this is a quote, has emerged as a significant threat to the United States as it infiltrates migration flows from Venezuela, perpetrated irregular warfare within the country, and used drug trafficking as a weapon against their citizens. I do know that President Trump did declare, I believe, this gang as a terrorist organization, and we'll look into what defines that here in a minute, but I can agree with it. Based upon a review of TDA's activities and in consultation with the Attorney General and the Secretary of the Treasury on February 20th, 2025, acting pursuant to the authority in 8 U.S.C. 1189, the Secretary of State designated TDA as a foreign terrorist organization. There it is. Foreign terrorist organization. What defines that? I wish that all these proclamations were written in the same way that he writes his tweets. It would be absolutely hilarious. Section 1. I find and declare that TDA is based on these findings and by the authority vested in me by the Constitution of the laws of the United States of America, including 50 U.S.C. 21, I proclaim that all Venezuelan citizens 14 years of age or older who are members of TDA are within the United States and are not actually naturalized or lawful permanent residents. Okay, so we've seen this mentioned in the other article. That's why that is being cited. I further find and declare that all such members of TDA are a danger to the public peace or safety of the United States. Section 2. I direct the Attorney General within 60 days of the date of this proclamation to prepare and publish a letter under her signature declaring the policy described in Section 1 of this proclamation as the policy of the United States and attaching this proclamation. I direct the Attorney General to transmit this letter to the Chief Justice of the United States. I'll tell you right now, you do not make a comment like this without an agenda. I direct the Attorney General within 60 days of the date of this proclamation. That means within 60 days, I expect you to have enough information to justify what the hell I want to do. That is what that means. And that is going to be the Alien Enemies Act. Section 3. I direct that all alien enemies described in Section 1 of this proclamation are subject to immediate apprehension, detention, removal, and further that they shall not be permitted residence in the United States. Pursuant to the Alien Enemies Act, the Attorney General and the Secretary of Homeland Security shall be consistent with applicable law, apprehend, restrain, secure, and remove every alien enemy described in Section 1, such alien enemies, and to establish any other regulations which are found necessary in the premises and for the public safety. That's interesting. That is interesting. I think something to take note of. That being, and to establish any other regulations which are found necessary. That is an interesting statement. That means things can change. Okay, so the justification is in the premises and for the public safety. That is it. Alien enemies apprehended pursuant to this proclamation shall be subject to detention until removed from the United States in such place of detention as may be directed by the officers responsible for the execution of these regulations. That's interesting. That's instant deportation to wherever we say fit. So one thing was the use of this foreign terrorist organization, or just terrorists in general. What defines that? I did look that up, and here is what I got. And this was from 8 U.S. Code 1189 that was cited in there. Designation of foreign terrorist organization. And I'll read it. Terrorist organization. Security and related grounds in general, any alien who has a consular officer or the Attorney General knows or has reasonable ground to believe seeks to enter the United States to engage solely, principally, or incidentally in any activity to violate any law of the United States relating to espionage or sabotage, or to violate or evade any law prohibiting the export from the United States of goods, technology, or sensitive information. Any other unlawful activity, that's a big one, or any activity a purpose of which is the opposition to or the control or overthrow of the government of the United States by force, violence, or other unlawful means is inadmissible. Terrorist activities. In general, any alien who has engaged in a terrorist activity, a consular office, the Attorney General, or the Secretary of Homeland Security knows or has reasonable ground to believe, that's key one, is engaged in or is likely to engage after entry in any terrorist activity as defined in Clause 4. They really need paragraphs in this. Has, under circumstances indicating an intention to cause death or serious bodily harm, incited terrorist activity, representative, as defined in Clause 5, a terrorist organization, as defined in Clause 4, or a political, social, or other group that endorses or espouses terrorist activities. This is very broad, and I would say that it covers it. I mean, just this statement of any other unlawful activity pretty much covers it. And also that reasonable claim, that pretty much covers it as well. So one thing regarding if it's linked to a political, like an actual government, I did look into that for a moment. And I looked up on Ground News. The Venezuela's minister stated not a single one appears on the organizational chart of the now extinct Tren de Aragua organization. Not a single one. So this is the Venezuelan minister refuting the claims that it's linked to their government, and that the minister claims the United States' refusal to accept this reality is their prerogative. Also notes Venezuela asserts that Tren de Aragua was effectively wiped out in 2023, claiming that ongoing allegations of its existence are based on opposition claims. I looked into this a bit, and I did use AI, but it brought back some very legit information, I feel, that, of listed events that have occurred since that time to show that they are still very much active. I think the Venezuela government is just covering themselves in that regard, and I get it, but it's still going on. It sounds nice, but it's still going on. Another thing that was mentioned was the Alien and Sedition Acts of 1798. So this was pretty interesting. The Alien and Sedition Act 1798, and this is from archives.gov. This was passed in preparation for an anticipated war with France. The Alien and Sedition Acts tightened restrictions on foreign-born Americans and limited speech critical of the government. Interesting. I didn't notice that the first time I was going through this. I wonder how and in what ways it would limit speech. Soft censorship is a topic in and of itself. It really is. There's a lot of ways to do it by just setting up barriers to deter people from pursuing certain topics. In 1798, the United States stood on the brink of war with France. The Federalist Party, which advocated for a strong central government, believed that Democratic Republican criticism of Federalist policies was disloyal and feared that aliens or non-citizens living in the United States would sympathize with the French during a war. As a result, a Federalist-controlled Congress passed 4 laws, known collectively as the Alien and Sedition Acts. These laws raised the residency requirements for citizenship from 5 to 14 years, authorized the president to deport aliens, and permitted their arrest, imprisonment, and deportation during wartime. The Sedition Act made it a crime for American citizens to print, utter, or publish any false, scandalous, and malicious writing about the government. Really. I remember when, I believe it was Kellyanne Conway, came up with the iconic statement of quote unquote alternative facts. Well, it would be easy to say, I don't like what you're saying. And that sounds like an alternative fact, and that sounds a bit malicious and you might be hurting my feelings. And you shouldn't be able to say that anymore. And you should just get the hell out. This is concerning. I really don't think that Tren de Aragua has a propaganda, whole setup where they're being like, hey, you know what, let's fund a whole bunch of people to push a pro-drug agenda so we can get more people high. I really just don't see that happening. But, if you enact this, you can use it, and it doesn't have to be against them. It can be against others. And there's already a lot of attacking going on the free press, and this could cause a lot of harm. We'll see what comes from this. Very interesting. The laws were directed against Democratic Republicans, the party typically favored by new citizens. The only journalists prosecuted under the Sedition Act were editors of Democratic Republican newspapers. Sedition Act, were editors of Democratic Republican newspapers. Wow. So this was used against our press, against people who disagreed or threw up an alternative fact. That was brilliant by her. It was absolute BS, but it was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Love it. Love it. Okay. Let's read some more alternative facts. God, I love that. Okay. It's just such a blatant lie. And the fact that she's just, for lack of a better term, just got the balls just to say that, you gotta love it. You just say it enough, it becomes true. It becomes an alternative fact. It really does. Whether you like it or not, it's alternative fact. Okay, I'll calm down. Sedition Act trials, along with the Senate's use of its contempt powers to suppress dissent, set off a firestorm of criticism against the Federalists and contributed to their defeat in the election of 1800, after which the acts were repealed or allowed to expire. The controversies surrounding them, however, provided for some of the first tests of the limits of freedom of speech and press. Wow. Wow. I have not heard this point brought up in the media as a concern. I really have not. And I want to look more into it. So here's the transcript. Note the Alien and Sedition Acts consist of the following acts. 1, an act supplementary to and to amend the act entitled an act to establish an uniform rule of naturalization and to repeal, act concerning aliens, act respecting alien enemies, an act in addition to the act, an act for the punishment of certain crimes against the United States. That's the Sedition Act. Okay, I want to look at number 4, the Sedition Act. Take me to it. Okay, so this is the Sedition Act. 5th Congress of the United States at the 2nd session, begun and held at the city of Philadelphia in the state of Pennsylvania on Monday, the 13th of November, 1797. Congratulations. An act in addition to the act entitled An Act for the Punishment of Certain Crimes Against the United States, Section 1. Be it enacted by the Senate and House Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, that if any persons shall unlawfully combine or conspire together with intent to oppose any measure or measures of the government of the United States, which are or shall be directed by proper authority, or to impede the operation of any law of the United States, or to intimidate or prevent any person holding a place or office in or under the government of the United States from undertaking, performing, or executing his trust or duty, and if any person or persons with intent as aforesaid shall counsel, advise, or attempt to procure any insurrection, riot, unlawful assembly, or combination, that's protesting, everybody, whether such conspiracy, threatening, counsel, advice, or attempt shall have the proposed effect or not, he or they shall be deemed guilty of a high misdemeanor, and on conviction before any court of the United States having jurisdiction thereof shall be punished by a fine not exceeding $5,000. I wonder what that is now. Not that most of the population has $5,000 to spare. And by imprisonment during a term not less than 6 months, nor exceeding 5 years. Wow. And further, at the discretion of the court, may be holden to find sureties for his good behavior in such sum, and for such time, and as said court may direct. I want to make a note of that, just the punishments in general. Now, section 2. This is intense, everybody. It really is. It really is. And this is a big deal. I mean, this affects every citizen within the US. Our concerns, at least day to day, are not necessarily as affected by the Alien Enemies Act, but this portion right here can affect your day-to-day life. It really can. Section 2, and be it farther enacted that if any person shall write, print, utter, or publish, or shall cause or procure to be written, printed, uttered, or published, or shall knowingly and willingly assist or aid in writing, printing, uttering, or publishing any false, scandalous, and malicious writing or writings against the government of the United States, or either house of the Congress of the United States, or the President of the United States, with intent to defame the said government, or either house of the said Congress, or the said President, or to bring them, or either of them, into contempt or disrepute, or to excite against them, or either or any of them, the hatred of the good people of the United States, or to stir up sedition within the United States, or to excite any unlawful combinations therein, for opposing or resisting any law of the United States, or any act of the President of the United States done in pursuance of any such law, or of the powers in him vested by the Constitution of the United States, or to resist, oppose, or defeat any such law or act, or to aid, encourage, or obey any hostile designs of any foreign nation against the United States, their people or government, then such person being thereof convicted before any court of the United States having jurisdiction thereof shall be punished by a fine not exceeding $2,000 and by imprisonment not exceeding 2 years. To summarize that, if you piss me off or I don't like what you're saying, I can throw you in jail. Well, isn't that badass if you're on the right side of that, deal? Like, that's fantastic. But if you're not, you're screwed. Section 3, and be it further enacted and declared that if any person shall be prosecuted under this act for the writing or publishing any libel aforesaid, it shall be lawful for the defendant upon the trial of the cause to give in evidence in his defense the truth of the matter contained in publication charged as a libel, and the jury who shall try the cause shall have a right to determine the law and the fact under the direction of the court, as in other cases. I've heard of libel laws. I can't recall exactly what it is. I know it has to do with the press. Let's look it up. Help me out. Libel law. What is it? Okay, this is libel law. Libel law is a legal framework that protects individuals from false and damaging statements made about them in written or published form. It's a type of defamation distinct from slander spoken defamation, where someone can sue if the false statement harms their reputation, causes financial loss, or exposes them to public contempt, provided it's presented as fact and not opinion. Interesting. So this is why it's being used right here. Exposes them to public contempt. That is the key portion of that definition and how it applies to the Alien and Sedition Act. Section 4, and be it further enacted that this act shall continue be in force until the 3rd day of March. Yeah, okay. Signed by a whole bunch of old guys, blah, blah, blah. John Adams, President of the United States, July 14, 1798. This is what concerns me, as this will most likely affect all citizens of the United States. Not that I don't care about everyone else, but I do consider the power of this act not necessarily to be in deportation of individuals, but controlling public opinion and the population, because this right here, the Sedition Act, can do it. And it's very concerning, the power that it grants. I mean, I would love to throw people in jail that I don't like. I mean, that's fantastic. It just make things easier in general if the people that stood in my way just could go away. And so I understand why they want to do that, but it's not necessarily the best thing or the nicest thing to do to people. God, I can't believe they're going to get that. I wonder if, it says that the act is made up of these 4 portions. I wonder if you can just enact a portion of it rather than the whole thing. Probably not. But if you wanted to do it, can you just make up another act and then pass it in Congress? I don't think the purpose of it is necessarily to pass the Alien Act. I think where the money's at is the Sedition Act. Like, that's where it's at, everybody. That's where the power's at. Well, I think we covered that. Just to wrap things up a bit. So we found out that this whole thing is more than just one act. We have the Sedition Act. We found out the importance of that is very big, especially when it comes to free speech. You know, there was the claim that there must be a war, invasion, or predatory incursion of U.S. territory. And that second, the invasion or hostile act must be committed by a foreign government. You can argue that foreign government didn't have anything to do with it, but I think that, one, these people are coming in to break our laws. There is that intention, and they are also causing harm to the American people. And there is probably money coming from a government one way or another. So whether you have direct evidence or not, they did cite a lot, and we don't have time to get into everything, but I'm sure there's actually something to it. So I can buy it, and I think it's probably legit that under that claim, you could use it, you could justify it. That there were two related executive orders that addressed the designation of foreign enemies and an invasion. The first order was titled Designating Cartels and Other Organizations as Foreign Terrorist Organizations. Okay. And guaranteeing the states against invasion. Let me look that up real quick. Let's see if there's anything useful here. This was January 20th, 2025. This was early on. So this is an argument saying that an essential feature of any sovereign nation is the existence of territorial boundaries and the inherent authority to decide who and what may cross those boundaries. I can get behind that. Okay, so this is just setting standards. Okay, this is just setting the stage for what is to come, basically. A press release. You know, it's talking about the sovereignty of the US and the states. That's setting up to say that we're under attack, right? That's what that's about. The foreign terrorist organization, that's legit. We looked up the definition of it, and I would agree that it's a terrorist organization. It's not meant to necessarily come in and stabilize things unless they were deciding to change their tactic and open up treatment centers. I mean, that would be a benefit. To direct the manner and degree of the restraint to which such alien enemies shall be subject. That was one concern about that. You know, basically saying that, let us know what you think we should do in order to handle this problem, and we can make some changes. That's a little concerning, just because that is pretty broad. Then we got into a little bit of detail about the Sedition Act, and that is what's concerning for me, and I would say the public in general. That the Sedition Act made it a crime for American citizens to print, utter, or publish any false, scandalous, and malicious writing about the government. Another note there, the laws were directed against Democratic Republicans, the party typically favored by new citizens, right? The only journalists prosecuted under the Sedition Act were editors of Democratic Republican newspapers. Now, what is the Democratic Party known for? It is known for the party that typically favors and is favored by new citizens. I expect to hear an argument in the future, if this gets passed, as a reason, or like just a similar thing, like a little copy and paste of events from the past to now for possibly going after journalists. And that's concerning. The Sedition Act trials, along with the Senate's use of its contempt powers to suppress dissent, set off a firestorm. I expect that to happen again. If this will happen again, if it leads to the defeat of the Republicans for a Democratic win coming, we'll see if that happens. Then another comment that I thought was important, fine not exceeding $5,000 and by imprisonment during a term not less than 6 months, nor exceeding 5 years. What is 5,000 US dollars today? 246,000. Okay. So unless you got 246,000 to bail yourself out, I would say that this might affect you. It just might. Interesting and scary. And then, of course, he just got time in jail, too. Okay, well, in summation, part of it is legitimate. I think you can get it passed. What is concerning is everything that can limit free speech. We have heard constant attacks on all sources of media that express dissent against the current government. And this will grant them more power. This will grant them the legal means to go after those who give an alternative perspective on events. How about that? It's easy to say things are false, but that doesn't necessarily make that true. And I am worried about that. I am really worried about that, especially with just what I'm trying to do, which is look into topics and provide good information. If my information goes against the grain, so to say, whether it's true or not, you can make an argument under that this should be shut down. And I think we should all be concerned about that for our own well-being. Yeah, that's really concerning. So I hope everybody got some good information from this. One thing I like to do is to recommend books and sources of good information. Just recently finished John Wayne and Jesus. That was a fantastic book. Highly recommend it. Really gave me some new perspectives on just how big these media companies are in the evangelical faith. Their audience, just how big it is. I had no idea. And then it really gave also an idea of how different things like masculinity have been used in order to obtain political power. That was a big one. Reading The Myth of American Idealism right now by Noam Chomsky and Nathan Robinson. Always challenged Chomsky. I have purchased some of his books, but never read them because, well, I am an American idealist and he is critical against some things and usually just pisses me off. So I chose not to read them, but I seen this title. It's very recent. And being an American idealist, I wanted to look into that further. And it definitely challenges some of your beliefs. I think after that one, I might go to The Divide. And this is about the wealth gap. We'll see. But if you check out the description below, I have I'm an Amazon associate, so you can go to my Amazon associate store and it would help out the channel. The books aren't marked up, but if you use those links, it does help. And, you can check out more stuff such as articles on www.tospeakonline.com and pretty much find us on all social media platforms at To Speak Online. Please check us out on Spotify. Could really use some support there. And I appreciate everybody's time. And I hope everybody got something good from this. So thank you for joining. Have a great day.